Long, 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 but a very, very long time ago. Far, 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 and when I say far, I mean thousands of miles from here, there was a huge landmass called Abya. The people who lived there were a friend to all. Trees, flowers, plants, grasses, animals, birds, insects, spiders, stones, mountains, and rivers. For they knew they were of the same and from the same, and were one with everything. Little Ear's people populated an area larger than France, and Little Ear's village was at the foot of the mountains of the Andes, surrounded by forest, with a river meandering to the west side of the village. Little Ears was born to the Mapuche people, which means the people of the land. He grew up like most kids in his village, free and wild, allowed to develop at his own pace. Now, names are a very serious matter, and therefore the children were expected to eventually reveal the name by which they would be known from then on. But meanwhile, their families and friends would have a pet name for each child. And so, Little Ears is the pet name of our hero. We meet our hero in the year of his naming, after 2 cycles of 7 years, when the children would go outside the safety of the village, fend for themselves for 4 days and 4 nights, whilst exploring and developing a relationship to his or her surrounding environment. The children that had come of age that year had been going through a thorough training during the whole of the previous 12 months. They learned to read nature, where you could find water, for example, or how to make a fire. They learned to know where they could find edible fruits, seeds and roots, how to hunt or fish and build a shelter, make their own basic tools and everything else you might imagine that would help them live in the wilderness. One of those nights when the children and their elders who were overseeing their training got together for their nightly review of the day's learning, Little Ears asked,
"Why? Why do we have to find our own name? Why couldn't the elders name us? We will save all this trouble."
Oh, so you would have somebody else decide who you're going to become, and then have power over you? No, my boy. You need to travel your own path, not someone else's.
So, the months of training continued until the day for their naming ritual. They would leave the village that day as children, and in 4 days they would come back as adults. By mid-morning, the whole village was gathered at the entrance, hanging in family groups with the member whose naming ritual was just about to begin. The children left, feeling nervous, for they would want a good name for themselves, but would have to take the one that the spirits decided. They were accompanied by one elder a little way to their destiny. Then they would be left to carry on alone.
Okay, little ears. Choose the way you're going to go. And walk that way until the sun is up in the highest point in the sky. Then look for somewhere to come. And don't worry if it doesn't come straight away. And be careful with false visions. Now keep your eyes open and see everything. And keep your ears open too. You must hear all sounds. Okay, then on the fourth day, you will come back to us and I will meet you at the creek. Okay, now farewell, my son. And be good.
The first part of the climb was easy and allowed Little Ears to lose himself in thoughts of failure and disaster and worry himself almost to death, doubting himself. At times, there had been children that never found their name on the first try, who would come back without a power name or their totem, and the name he or she would be known by the tribe. A sudden rustle amongst nearby bushes startled him. And slowly and silently he parted the branches. He saw a rabbit and let out a loud sigh that made the rabbit jump. It turned 180 degrees in mid-air and froze where it landed. Its ears stood rigid and its paws trembled. Little Ears gave a loud moan.
Are you my name? Or my totem? Or my real name?
The question sounded full of disappointment. And as he asked the question, the rabbit's ears went down as if answering. Little Ears climbed on, but was a bit downcast, for he found it very humiliating to be called Frightened Rabbit. The day was boring and grey to Little Ears, for he could not take the frightened rabbit image from his mind. The evening caught him unawares, and he hastily found a place to sleep for the night. But that night, Little Ears had a dream, which was full of frightened rabbits. Early the next morning, he got up, cold and tired. He needed to make a fire. So he walked out of his makeshift shelter. Walking down to the nearby stream, that when the rains came would turn into a proper river, the waters were crystal clear and full of fish, and he found dried sticks and wood enough to make a fire. After he had started a fire and had had a drink of hot tea from the dried leaves his mother had packed for him, he made his way to the stream to catch his breakfast. Little Ears was still bothered about the rabbit he had seen earlier the day before, so it kept on creeping back into his thoughts. not allowing him to concentrate on his real task, to find his name.
How do you do that? How do you find a name? I mean, will it be behind a tree? Or under a rock? Grandfather said once that animals and trees already know your name, but they are not telling. Or are they? Maybe they are.
After he had a succulent breakfast, he packed up and left the makeshift camp to carry on looking for his glorious name. He also had time to look for a good place to make permanent camp. He started walking up the stream, following it up the mountains and to its source. After a couple of hours walking, he came to a sizable pool, fed by small trickles of water coming from up in the mountains. A few metres from the pool, he found a small cave, big enough for two. He dumped his things and rolled out the blankets. Once he was happy with the setup, he stepped out and went to explore the area and follow the biggest of the small streams feeding the pool. The image of the rabbit invaded his thoughts, which kept his anxiety just below the surface. The path he'd chosen was very rocky and steep, and not paying attention, he tripped and fell face first on the sharp rocky ground and hurt himself.
Ow!
It was mostly bruises and a couple of cuts. But while recovering, he sat up and noticed not too far ahead, up in the sky, 2 eagles were flying around. He could hear their frantic cries. They seemed to be flying round a small outcrop on the cliff. He could see a bush moving, though there wasn't any breeze in this early spring afternoon. It was getting late, and soon it would be dark, not enough time to explore, but he resolved to get back first thing in the morning. Heading back, he gathered herbs and edible roots and hoped there was a fish in the trap he'd left in the river. He had hurt himself, and he needed to deal with that. After breakfast, first thing the next morning, he went straight for the cliff. When he got there, he saw the eagles were still flying around the bush. The climb was difficult and slow, but not that Little Ears would have any real difficulty. He was the best climber in his age group and better than several others in the tribe. When he got to about 30 metres, he could see that entangled in the bush was a young eagle. Probably its parents were the eagles flying around, who of course started to get nervous of Little Ears coming too close to their young eaglet. Little Ears approached the eaglet, but the parents started flying too close to Little Ears, and it was obvious that the young eagle wasn't sure what the boy wanted and was frightened. Little Ears decided to climb down the cliff and go back to the camp and see if there were any fish caught up in the fish trap. Finding 2, he quickly went back to the eagle with his bounty. Maybe this would reassure the young eagle. The climb wasn't as bad as the first time, and Little Ears placed one fish close to the eaglet and waited for it to calm down and maybe begin to trust that he didn't mean it any harm, especially since they revered eagles in his tribe. Very slowly, the boy approached the young bird. Little by little, he got nearer and nearer and nearer, and eventually saw that the eagle had entangled itself with the bush, catching itself and not able to get free. Little Ears got his knife out and started to try and cut the bush so as the eagle could escape. Which wasn't easy, I can tell you. I mean, imagine trying to free something that's intending to make a hole in your head. So it went on for a while, with Little Ears jumping out of the way just as a beak came to the place where his head had been only a microsecond before. By and by, Little Ears managed to free the eaglet, but not without injuries. The worst one was on his left shoulder, where the eagle had grabbed him with its claw. Little Ears had been by the eagle trying to free it for almost the whole day, and now, after the climax, he started to feel cold, even though he was sweating. By the time he got back to his camp, he didn't have any energy or strength left, but he knew he needed to clean his wounds, especially the shoulder one. Luckily, he had wood medicinal herbs, water, and there was also a fish that he found in the trap while he was cleaning his wounds. He rolled the fish in leaves and left them to cook slowly while he put some of the concoction he had made with some of the medicinal herbs onto his wounds. He found some moss with antiseptic properties that his mother had shown him. He also found some bandages that, being wise, she had packed for him. Little Ears felt feverish, cold and sweaty, and soon he fell asleep. In Little Ears' dreams, he is back at the beginning of the name hunting. He could see in his dreams that all the animals hid away before he could get near them, except for the rabbit and the screams of eagles. Then, in the middle of all that racket, he heard a voice behind him.
Little Ears, you have travelled far and been true to your nature. Fly among your brethren and inspire your people with your far-seeing, and remember to temper your feelings, to roam and go forth.
He saw the rabbit, frozen still, covered by a shadow, clearly in the shape of a powerful eagle, and heard a very loud scream, the call of an eagle. Little Ears jumped awake, and he didn't know how much he had slept, but he knew it was way past the time he should have gone back to his village and tell them what he'd seen and what he thought. So, as quick as he could manage it, he headed for home. And even though he felt faint and his vision was blurring up, he kept on going. He didn't want to worry his mother. By and by, Little Ears was met by the warriors of his village and the elders. Back at the village, the Machi and the elders took him away from the village people and went through a naming ritual within the shaman's hut. The ritual was mainly to find out the name that the new man will be presented to the village and the tribe with. Little Ears told the elder his adventure, making sure he made it clear he would not accept the name Frightened Rabbit, to which the elder laughed, for he already knew his name and was ready to announce it to the people so the whole world would meet the newest warrior of the people. And so it was that one early evening at the beginning of that spring, by the village of the Sacred Creek, that the people first hear the name introduced by the chief elder.
Good evening, my people. We have gathered here to welcome our newest warrior. The child that we used to know as Little Ears, we will know now as Wild Eagle.
Autananko!